Called Open Your Heart to Love by Judy Blackwelder, another unity minister. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Let your walls come crashing down. You'll find blessings all around. Don't look out, just look within. For you a new world will begin. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Reach out to your fellow man. Always lend a helping hand. The greatest thing that you can do is give out and receive it too. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Open your heart to love. Then you will know what dreams are made of. Open your heart to love. Open your heart. Open your heart. Open your heart to love. Thank you so much.
Now I would like to call for the chaplain to bring the prayer box forward and say a little bit about that. Pray for us.
This is our prayer box. We keep it in the back of the chapel so it's available for you to write down your prayers and place them in the box. They will stay here approximately 30 days before we send them to Silent Unity at Unity Village, where they're prayed over for another 30 days. And now let us just take a moment to pause, relaxing into this moment. Let us move our hearts closer to that still place within. And let us acknowledge now in gratitude that these prayers are fulfilled to their highest good of all. And for this we are grateful as we say thank you, and so it is. Amen.
And now I would like to ask Debbie to read the daily word.
I experience joy as I give of myself in service to others. Today I serve those closest to me as well as the larger community through my thoughts, words, and actions. As I see individuals or groups, I remember each person is the image of God, just as I am, with unlimited potential. In my professional work and as a volunteer, I look for opportunities to offer my skills and service to them. Divine love flows to me and from me as I do what is mine to do. I experience great joy as I give myself in service to others. I need no expression of gratitude from them, although they give it. My service bless me with a growing awareness of oneness with those I serve and with all of humankind. And from Zechariah 7:9, thus says the Lord of hosts, render true judgments, show kindness and mercy to one another.
Thank you. I'd like to remind you that we are doing a bit of experimentation. Well, I guess it's not really experimentation. We're just saying the Lord's Prayer twice. One with our traditional translation, and one with somebody else's translation who liked it a little bit different. So if David brings up the Lord's Prayer, we will say the Lord's Prayer, and then I will prompt us to go on from there. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Second prayer. Our parent who is among us, blessed be your creation. May your reign be a reality here on earth. May you become more interested in building your kingdom here and now than in waiting for it to come down from above. Let us share our bread with those who hunger. Let us learn to forgive as well as to receive forgiveness. Help us through the time of temptation, delivering us from all evil. For ours are the eternal blessings that you pour upon the earth. Amen. Now I would like to invite our guest speaker to come up. She is going to do what we usually do with meditation. She's going to do it at the end of her talk. So her whole talk is our meditation. Is that right, Donna?
That's right. Thank you so much. Good morning to all of you. Good morning. Good morning. It's always so wonderful to be in a Unity church. My husband Michael and I have been with Unity since probably the early 90s. He was speaking with Cliff earlier as we came in this morning about the fact that you lived in Santa Cruz, California. My husband is a native Californian, and that was the first Unity church that we became involved in. We later went on, and we lived in Birmingham, Alabama. We were very, very involved with the Unity Church in Birmingham for about 11 years. I did a lot of spiritual teaching there. We eventually moved to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where we were also involved, and I did a lot of teaching there as well. For the last 4 or 5 years or so, I really haven't been doing as much teaching. I've been doing other things. This year, I have returned to that, and I get tremendous fulfillment out of it. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I come out of the business world where I was an organization development consultant, for those of you who are familiar with what that is. But it basically entailed working a lot with groups and doing a lot of facilitation and a lot of teaching and a lot of management development. But I truly, truly love being involved in spiritual teaching as well. So this morning, I'm going to see if I can figure out how to work this. we have my presentation.
Is it on?
It's on, okay. The title of my talk today is Open-Hearted Compassion, a HeartMath Approach. How many people in here are familiar with the term HeartMath, just by a show of hands? A few of you? Okay, so for those who are, this will be more or less a preview, but maybe you will be able to look at it from a slightly different perspective. For those of you who are not familiar with it, I will be talking about it some this morning. What I'd like to do this morning is start by just inviting you to turn within for a few moments. We're not really going to meditate, but what I would like for you to do is see if you can connect from within to this higher divine quality that we call compassion. And I want you to think about a time in your life when you have either reached out to another in compassion, or someone has reached out to you, or even a time when you've offered yourself self-compassion. And then I would like for you to just get in touch with the feelings there, not so much about the situation or the circumstance, but about the feelings associated with experiencing compassion. I'll give you just a minute or so to go within and see what emerges for you. Okay, if you can return your attention to the room. As a spiritual teacher, I tend to speak more interactively than one-on-one. And so with anyone in here, just in a few words, I am going to try to keep my talk on time this morning, I'd like to share what came up for you, what emerged as we did this exercise. Yes?
A feeling of deep peace.
Deep peace associated with giving and or receiving compassion. Okay, anyone else? Yes, Dean.
Yeah, I felt just a wave of love. But with the love came an energy, like a prompting to take action as well. There was it was like a motivation, or maybe the word zeal is a better word, but it was not just a love that was passive, but it was an active loving.
Thank you, Dean. Yes.
I got a feeling of well-being. The image that came with it was that of a meadow on a early spring day. I know it's fall, but that one was spring. And just feeling that kind of in the arms of a loving blanket.
Okay. Thank you so much, Faye. Yes.
It reminded me of me talking to my daughter last night to show this love and compassion to one of her coworkers that's in the hospital.
Okay.
And she thanked my mother. And I still feel that compassion for this young woman.
Thank you. Yes.
The image that came to me were the homeless people on the corner of the highway. And a lot of times I have to battle with, like cringing as I see them. But What I realized was there's many times in my life that I've ended up in places I didn't want to be. And there were lots of decisions that I made to put me there. And I felt compassion both for myself and for them.
Self-compassion, very important point. Yes.
Yeah, when various people have reached out in compassion, for me, I think the feeling is the feeling of being supported.
Feeling supported.
Yeah, from without, from outside.
Thank you.
I thought about tears, God's tears, and as a therapist, sometimes when I work with people, not all times, but sometimes it's like I have to cry for them in order for them to be able to cry and have compassion for themselves, because sometimes it's very hard for them to find that compassion for themselves.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. You know, actually, compassion is simply a form of love. It's a form of kindness and caring. It is a dimension, actually, of the divine. I want to show this picture of these two children that I felt like just, they say a picture paints 1,000 words. And as you see the older boy embracing the younger boy, what really stood out to me is the fact that the older boy's hand seems to be intuitively placed across the heart of the younger boy, as if somehow he knew on some deep level that that is where the boy was brokenhearted at that time. Of course, we realize that children can be brokenhearted over many, many things, but the feelings are the same regardless of what the situation is that causes this need for compassion. I want to just tell a story. This really, it touched me this week when I was preparing for this talk. I saw a video about two high school girls, and they were competing in a track tournament. And one of the girls fell, and she wounded her knee really badly, and she was on the ground. Several of her teammates passed her by, and they didn't bother to stop. They just kept going. But another girl who was on the other team, it seemed like without even thinking, and she was a real contender for winning the competition, she stopped and tried to help the girl up. And when the girl couldn't stand, her competitor couldn't stand, she literally had her jump on her back, and she carried her across the finish line. Now, what is it, about certain people that will cause them to sacrifice even the potential for, winning a competition in order to help another person? It reminds me of the story in the Bible of the Good Samaritan, where many, many people passed the person that was lying in a ditch. They passed him by, yet the Good Samaritan, from what I remember about the story, was actually, I think, an enemy. Is that not right? For those of you who know your Bible history. And so I want to talk a little bit about that today. Cliff mentioned that I am on the global team for the Charter for Compassion. Any of you in here familiar with the Charter for Compassion? Now, I talked a little bit about this. I came and met with the board here at Unity of the Mountain. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into tremendous detail about it. But the Charter for Compassion is a global, worldwide movement. And their purpose is overall networking groups to dialogue about how to actually solve some of the major problems that we have on this planet today, some of the issues that are causing such a tremendous need for compassion in our world. Not only that, they offer educational programs on compassion. And what I've learned a lot, somebody in here mentioned the fact that there's so many, like the homeless people. What I have learned, as we look out in our world today, we see so much injustice. We see so much intolerance. I mean, we can witness abuses of every kind, racism, things of that nature. My husband and I, Michael, we visited, actually with one at Gail Campbell. I believe it was last week. We went down to the Lynching Museum in Montgomery. And if you've ever wanted to have your heart torn open, you need to visit down there. It's just an extreme example of what we can do through our prejudices. So the Charter for Compassion, the thing that is so, though, positive and uplifting and hopeful about it is, as I have gotten involved with this movement, I have learned that there are small grassroots movements all over this world that are reaching out, and they're working at a systemic level in order to, try to solve some of these major issues that we see across our planet. And they're doing it in a very organic way, because no one really believes that they have the answers to all of these, incredible problems that we have today. But by engaging in dialogue, opening up to the Spirit, now we don't necessarily call it opening up to the Spirit because it's a secular movement, but just being open to whatever emerges around solutions for this problem. That is a big mission of the Charter for Compassion. When we spoke earlier about compassion, and you were sharing with me, somebody mentioned the need for self-compassion. That is a critical component of compassion itself. Why do you think that is? Why is self-compassion so important?
It's hard to feel compassion for others until you compassion for yourself.
Exactly. Somebody mentioned earlier, too, Cliff did in his opening, about the inner child. For myself, I'm just going to admit to you, until the inner child movement, I really did not have a lot of compassion for myself. It was something I just didn't really spend a lot of time thinking about. I grew up in a Christian home, in a fundamentalist Christian church, and my family and I were there every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday evening. So I knew my Bible, and I learned how to be a moral person. I learned to be ethical. I learned how to follow the 10 Commandments and all of the rules. But at my age, and some of you in here can probably relate to this, my parents were not necessarily good at expressing their feelings. That generation just was sort of shut down to doing that. So they never really did show me a lot of compassion as a child. As I look back on that, I realized that I learned to suppress a lot of my feelings and emotions simply because actually at times it could even get me punished or scolded, and in order to avoid that, I would simply just sort of swallow my feelings. Well, it wasn't until the inner child movement, healing the inner child, that happened sort of around the, 1990s, something like that, I believe, is when that really became, I'm still ongoing, but when it became very, I guess, a really, I don't want to say popular, but overall people began to have a lot of awareness of their inner child, that I began to feel self-compassion for myself. What I want to do now is talk about dimensions of caring. And I heard, as you shared, as we started this talk this morning, I heard many different dimensions associated with caring. And I'm going to go through this slide, if you can see that. The very first dimension is pity, and pity means I am sorry for you. The second dimension is sympathy. I feel for you. The third dimension is empathy. I feel with you. Compassion is I am moved by you. And I recall Dean specifically saying when he shared that when he really tapped into those feelings around compassion, that he felt moved to take an action, to do something about it. Now what about this picture? I brought this picture back up from earlier of the older boy showing the younger boy empathy and compassion. Where do you think this fits on this chart? Do you think it's pity, sympathy, empathy, or compassion? It's compassion. Because he was moved. He was moved by the younger boy to take and embrace him and to put his arm across the younger boy's heart, sort of drawn to where he's hurting. Now, feeling moved to take compassion or have compassion for another can, be expressed in many ways. It can be as simple as this: embracing someone, hugging them when you're hurting. It can be offering a prayer. Sometimes when we look at all of the need for compassion in this world, it can seem just overwhelming. And there's actually, I also have been working on becoming certified in, it's called Compassion and Integrity Training. I want to teach that in the future, which is offered by the Charter for Compassion. And I learned there an interesting fact is that the number of people involved in a particular crisis or a situation where a lot of people are suffering, the number of people involved, as it increases, the level of compassion tends to decrease. Somehow it is as if we just can't relate, on such a large scale. For instance, if there's a hurricane or if there's a tornado, we may reach out and we may give money to it, but it's just a little bit more difficult to connect. And that's the reason often, you see that whenever someone is advertising a need for people to donate money to a particular cause, that they will talk about one particular person instead of a number of people, rather than talk about the whole. But basically, feeling moved, and for some that means, becoming an activist. It may mean getting involved in something like the Charter for Compassion, but for others it may be much more one-on-one, and that is equally as needed. It also means feeling compassion for yourself, as we talked about earlier. I want to ask you a question. Which do you think is more important in cultivating compassion? Is it the brain or the learning that occurs over the years? Like, for instance, I shared with you all that I learned in my earlier Christian education. Or do you think it is the heart?
Heart.
You think it's the head?
Heart.
The heart? Yeah. Some people think the heart, some people think the head. Okay. According to the HeartMath Institute, it's actually both. It's not as if it's not important that we learn how to be ethical human beings, particularly as children. We need to learn right from wrong. We need to be taught how to be responsible, the need for reaching out and helping others. But can anyone think of limitations of how the head can actually cause us to be not really compassionate? Think of any examples? Yes.
Well, say for instance, if there's a hurricane or something that's massive that affects thousands of people, you can feel sorry for them, but you think, oh, what can I do? It's so so widespread. and,
Exactly.
You know, you want to do something and maybe you end up doing nothing.
Right.
Praying, of course, praying for them.
Right. Good example. Anybody else? Me.
Well, I was thinking immediately that the head can be judgmental.
Yes.
And we can almost say, well, and I'm not saying it's right, but it's easy to say, well, maybe they deserved a little bit of what they got.
That's another very good example. Or what about when you pity people? Have you ever had someone try to express their caring for you, but it came across as, I pity you? How do you think that makes you feel?
Yeah.
It makes you feel maybe in a way like they feel superior to you, and you know, I pity you being in that situation. But a lot of times there may be a connotation that possibly you deserved it. Also, you know, when you start thinking about compassion as a larger topic, it really does many times end up involving your value system, right? Particularly if it's coming from the head, because our value system often leads us to determine, you know, it really requires discernment to know what is truly compassionate, because one person, let's take, you know, an example like euthanasia, right? That's a big, huge example. For some, it might be a compassionate act to have someone commit that, or help someone to commit euthanasia. On the other hand, if your value system is different, they may say that is actually murder, and it's a wrong thing. So this is where we get into problems in discerning what's truly compassionate. Secondly, sometimes we, you know, when we look at the bigger picture, what we offer short term as compassion may actually be harmful. Let's say you have an addicted child, and your addicted child is in pain and is suffering because, you know, it is withdrawing. He or she is withdrawing from drugs. It's not necessarily a compassionate act to provide that child with drugs. So these are some of the issues that we have to be careful about when we're coming purely from the brain. Now, some people say, well, as long as the person is served and they benefit somehow from your compassion, does it matter if it comes from the head or the heart? But these are some of the issues that we can run into when it's solely from the head. The HeartMath Institute, and I see as I shared with Dean that I might have a tendency to run over. I see my time has come to an end here, so I'm going to walk through this fairly quickly. But, so I'm going to read this, see if I can make this work. Yeah. Okay, I want to talk about just quickly, the belief of the HeartMath Institute is it's the ability to transform our emotions into higher quality feelings and perceptions, which is essential for the advancement of individual and collective human consciousness. Their vision is to activate the heart of humanity. And I would like for you to, I really encourage you to get out and do some research on HeartMath. It is truly fascinating. They're based on science, okay? They've been doing this for about 20 years, and they've done a tremendous amount, some 300 research studies around the world on, you know, the benefits of opening your heart. And their mission is to help people bring their physical, mental, and emotional systems into balanced alignment with their heart's intuitive guidance through heart coherence. And so I'm going to quickly here read to you just a little bit. As I mentioned, I have recently become certified as a HeartMath facilitator. And one of the little books I had in my study has some really, really good definitions, and I thought I would read it just so that I don't summarize and lose something from it. And it says, this is a description of the electromagnetic field of the heart. It says the heart produces an electromagnetic field. This magnetic field is measured with a device called a magnometer and can be detected up to about 3 feet from the body. This field is carrying information about our emotional states. Our nervous systems can detect the magnetic fields that other people around us are radiating. And the information carried by the heart's field can affect other people in measurable ways. In a sense, we are really broadcasting our emotions. It's through these energetic connections that we sense what others are feeling, and others can sense what we are feeling. And I think the more that we open our hearts, the more this is true. We begin to be able to intuitively sense what's going on with people. This information, which has influenced our emotions and inner attitudes, is being broadcast and can have beneficial effects on those around us. At HeartMath, I also became a global ambassador, where I regularly meditate using the HeartMath meditation practice with others around the world around issues that are occurring, particularly when there's hurricanes or tremendous fires or other things that are going on our planet. What is heart? The heart is an organ that pumps blood throughout our body, but our physical heart is also an information processing center sending important information to the brain and rest of the body. Many of the highest quality emotions we experience, such as appreciation, care, love, kindness, patience, and compassion, are born from the heart. Heart is associated with a deeper wisdom and intuitive knowingness that bypasses normal, logical, linear thought patterns and helps to direct our choices. Heart is the very core of who we are as human beings. It's our true, authentic self. And that's from the HeartMath Institute. And finally, I'm going to close with this. And I'm going to bring this back from more the scientific realm to the spiritual realm. And I was just amazed as we opened this today, because it's typical in synchronistic fashion, it seemed. There was so much in the songs and so much in the opening that just totally affirmed my whole message today. So in some ways, I feel like I'm speaking to the choir here. And, you know, to tell you truthfully, one of the reasons I've gotten involved with organizations such as the Charter for Compassion and the HeartMath Institute is that even though I love doing spiritual teaching, I think there's so many people out in this world that may never end up in seats like we're in today that really need to hear this message. And, you know, science is a universal language, and when you can remove it and become more secular about it, often people are willing to open up and listen to you that maybe wouldn't otherwise. So that is the reason I'm coming from that point of view. But I do want to talk about, and this is where it gets much more spiritual, the heart is literally the portal to the divine qualities. You know, as I sit here and I look at you all sitting in these seats, I see your lovely bodies. But I know that surrounding you is an energy field called your aura. It's in the Bible. You know, we know that all the saints, everyone, were depicted as having these beautiful auras. Well, it's not just saints. We all have that. And the more you open your heart, the more you will be able to begin to detect that around people. Or is there anyone in here that can sort of see the auras of people? I've met some people that have. But basically, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We truly are. And you know, when we realize that compassion as well as all of the other higher qualities of love, such as kindness, such as care, they all exist innately within us. And the issue here is to learn to open our hearts, to expand the heart energy, and then we will truly be operating through open-hearted compassion. And what I'd like to do now, I can't spend quite as long with it as I'd like to take us through just a quick meditation.
Take your time.
sit in your seats and become very grounded. Feel your feet connected to the floor and the seat totally and completely supporting you. I want you to sense within yourself whatever feels most natural to you. Dropping from your head, from your thoughts, down in to your heart field. You may want to literally touch your heart field. I want you to imagine breathing in and out through this field. Long, deep breaths in and out through your heart field. And now I'd like for you to connect with the divine quality of love known as compassion, caring, kindness for yourself and for your fellow beings on this planet. Bring that energy of compassion up and through your entire energy systems. Feel it radiating and expanding as it fills your heart and flows out around you. Touching those nearby. Expanding this energy to encompass the entire room. And even beyond. Continue to take slow, deep breaths. Breathing through your heart. Feeling divine love flowing through you. As we sit for a moment in the silence. Begin to return your attention to the room. Allowing yourself to come back to the present moment. I'd like to end with a slide. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw this. Just as the mother bird naturally, intuitively, puts herself in discomfort in order to save or make her little chicks feel more comfortable, we all each and every one of us, when we open our hearts, have those innate qualities within us. Thank you so very much. I really enjoyed spending time with you this morning and sharing with you open-hearted compassion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. We're going to go ahead and stand and sing our next song. Just trust your heart to lead you home. Always well picked by Barry. Here we go. At the starting of your journey, you can never see the end. Still you find the faith to follow down a road that often bends. You're searching for an answer, for a place you've never known. You hope to reach a haven where you'll be free to grow. Trust your heart to lead you home. Home is not the place you started from. It's a place you're reaching for. When you stretch beyond yourself to find a harbor in the storm, a dream will be your compass, your passion is your guide. Sometimes you will have to crawl, but sometimes you can fly. Trust your heart to lead you home. Like a painter with her canvas, or a sculptor with his clay, your life takes shape beneath your hands as you work through each day. You create a fabric with the threads of love you hold. You weave into your tapestry the pattern of your soul. Trust your